Hello there. I'm still currently in search of how to open these shows. Clearly, that one was more subdued. What do you think? This morning I was on a podcast. It's directed towards people who own lash salons, so people who do fake lashes. And I was talking about basically how to keep your books and records as a small business owner. I was talking about some of the subsidies that we have available to us, and sales tax and that sort of thing. The host was actually a CPA as well. She now owns a lash salon, but she's a CPA as well. So it was a really interesting conversation to talk about accounting for small business with another accountant, because I so rarely do that. I'm normally talking to a small business owner. Obviously, I'm chatting with clients or friends, or I'm coaching or that kind of thing. And so today we went over, as one of the questions she asked me was, what are the top 3 things that you see small business owners doing, like mistakes that they're making? And so I'm going to share those with you right now. My number 1 mistake that I see is just not doing it. That's the biggest one. Small business owners tend to just sort of put it off. There's a lot of negative feelings that get hung up in money and doing your bookkeeping, or even just doing something that you feel like you're not very good at, or that you don't have any training in, and that it feels like could have really serious consequences if you do it wrong. And so I understand exactly why this happens, and I get it, and I empathize for sure. But that's one of the biggest things that I see, is just putting it off and just not doing it. So I really recommend just putting in an hour a month, or maybe you need more than an hour a month, but block out at least once a month in your calendar to do your bookkeeping. So maybe that means putting receipts. That should mean either taking pictures of your receipts and putting them into your cloud that you then send to your bookkeeper, or maybe that means entering them into either Excel or QuickBooks or whatever it is, whatever system that you're using. But definitely make sure that you do that before it becomes overwhelming. I would even take pictures of receipts immediately. Like as soon as you get it, just take a picture of it, because receipts are really easy to lose or to, destroy in some way. Or if they sit in the sun, that thermal paper starts to fade and then you just can't read them. So take pictures of your receipts immediately, and don't put it off to the end of the year, and then you have a huge pile to do and it feels overwhelming. That's not a fun place to be in for anybody, for you or for the person who's going to help you, whether you're a tax accountant or your bookkeeper, whoever. Number 2 is not handling sales tax properly. So sales tax is one of those things that's sort of a big black hole for small business owners. There's a lot of information out there, and the CRA's website even has a lot of good information, but very little that describes the basics of it and the really high overview of just sort of what's going on and the details, because the people who write that sort of thing forget that they didn't know those details before they learned them. So not handling sales tax properly is a big one that I see. And within that, not separating sales tax and income tax. So income tax is tax that you pay on your income, obviously. But it's, you make money, you pay tax. Like that's how that works. There's no $30,000 threshold on the income tax side. It's, you make money, you pay tax on it. And the sales tax side, there is that $30,000 threshold. And I think that's part of what gets so confusing, is that you don't necessarily have to be registered. If you don't have $30,000 in revenue, so not net income, but revenue in 4 consecutive quarters, if you don't have that much, then you don't have to register. But you can voluntarily register, and then you have to charge sales tax. So if you have a sales tax number, you have to be charging the sales tax. And if you don't, then don't charge GST, HST, or sales tax. The number 3 thing that I see is categorizing expenses and just not really being sure how to do that. And I think that comes from not really understanding the idea or what the purpose of categorizing expenses is. And it's really just to put your transactions into buckets so that we're not looking at every transaction individually. We sort of group them together, and then we can say, oh, I spent this much on meals, or I spent this much on supplies, or whatever it may be. So I think if you start with a really good list of categories that you want to use, then it'll be easier to move your transactions into those categories later on. So I would start by either you can use the sole proprietor form. It's called a T2125. You can, if you just Google that, it'll come right up, and it gives you the list of expense accounts or categories that you need to put your transactions into if you're a sole proprietor. If you're a corporation, you have a lot more freedom there, but it is a good place to start to create categories. Then I would write down why you put things into those categories. So if you have something called office supplies, I would write out like, oh, I put like my pens and pencils in here and my telephone expenses and whatever it is that go into that account. Just so you're really, really clear about it when you go to do your bookkeeping next month and you're not like, oh man, like, what do I use this account for again? I may or may not have done that in the past. So pro tip, write that down. What goes into your accounts? I talked a lot about this yesterday about categorizing transactions. I think it was yesterday. So if you're looking for more details about that, definitely go and look at that live video that I did yesterday. Part of categorizing transactions is what to do with credit card payments and your sales tax payments. I see some small business owners will expense them. So they'll put them through to an expense account that they've called credit card payments and a different expense account that they've called HST payments. Those payments are not expenses. They should be transferred to the other account. So on the credit card side, if you've paid your credit card, it should just get transferred to the credit card. It's not an expense. You would have recorded the expenses when you recorded like the receipts, and it's like paid by your credit card. So that one's a little bit more tricky. It should just get transferred to the credit card. Those payments are not expenses in and of themselves. The expenses should be recorded individually. And the HST payments are not expenses either. HST is money that you've collected in trust for the government, so it's not really your money in the first place. So when you pay it out, it's really just that you've paid out the money you've collected on behalf of the government. It's not an expense. So you can't deduct credit card payments or HST payments on your taxes for that reason. If you have any questions about any of that, definitely let me know in the comments. We went over today the top 3 mistakes. Don't let it pile up. Deal with it at least once a month. Make sure that you're handling your sales tax properly, and if you have questions, get a hold of somebody like a professional. You can ask me in the comments as well. If it's a very specific question, I will ask to have a phone call with you because I will need more information from you. And the third thing was how to categorize transactions, which I actually went in great detail yesterday. Pretty sure it was yesterday, 2 days ago maybe. Anyways, very recently. So go and check out that live video if you're interested in that. Like I said, if you have any questions, leave them for me in the comments. I have included a link to the 7 accounting mistakes that small business owners make and quick fixes to stay out of trouble. So 2 of those are on that. 2 of the ones we went over today are on the PDF. So there's 5 more that you can get from that PDF. I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you tomorrow.